most even
the
law
registry
enforcement
would allow you to have much more effective background checks. So I don't understand why you won't just admit that you are making it harder for police to manage the streets by allowing all of these guns to go out without permits, without checks, and without background stuff. Why is that hard? Why can't you just stand by that?
Because that's not what I'm doing. I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms.
That's a different argument.
Okay, but
you may do. Here's what I'm saying. You want to say I'm a Second Amendment purist and I'm making it safer. You're not. You're making it more chaotic, and that's not a matter of opinion. That's the truth.
That is a matter of opinion, John.
But why take away their tools?
Because certain of their tools that they're using would be infringements upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, upon their constitutional rights, upon due process, upon other things.
That registering is an infringement?
Yes.
Okay. Is voting a right?
So Jon Stewart interviews Oklahoma State Senator Nathan Dahm about gun control and tries to get him in a gotcha moment, but fails, in my opinion. And we're going to talk about it. I'm your host, Hyde. This is Hide and Seek Media. Hello, all you beautiful and amazing people. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to the show. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. If you're already a subscriber here at Hide and Seek Media, make sure to head on over to Rumble and subscribe to my channel over there as well. Because on Rumble, you'll get videos I cannot put up on YouTube because I don't get censored on Rumble like I do here. And if you want bonus content that you can't find anywhere else, head on over to Locals and become a member. With your subscription, not only will you get access to all the YouTube and Rumble videos I put up, but you'll get bonus content you can't get anywhere else. So click the links down below and become members on my channels. Now, let's talk about this interview that Jon Stewart does with Nathan Dahm, an Oklahoma senator, state senator, on gun control. He tries to get him in a couple of gotcha moments where, he's like, you don't want to register guns, but you want to register illegal aliens and, whatever. And so we're going to watch this interview, and I'm going to talk about how Jon Stewart thinks that he's getting the better of Nathan Dahm. And really what it is that Nathan Dahm just can't articulate his points as well as some other people. And so I'm going to poke holes in Jon Stewart's points where Nathan Dahm should have. So let's watch this interview and follow along. And if you disagree with any of my points, or you agree with Jon Stewart or can back up some of the things he says, please leave a comment down below. I love to engage with my viewers, so feel free to fire away. All right, so let's watch this interview and hear what these guys have to say.
I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the one right that's listed in the Constitution that uses that very specific affirmative language, shall not be infringed.
It's also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
Correct, when it's talking about the militia and the state.
By the way, just for clarity's sake,
yeah.
I'm not against the Second Amendment. I don't want to ban guns. But you're saying more guns makes us more safe.
Yes.
So when we got 400 million guns in the country, we had an increase and gun deaths went up. So when exactly does this curve hit?
So I want to stop right here because he's right. Gun deaths did increase from 2019 on, right? But at 2019 is when we started to see the increase. And let's take a look at the country in general when we consider the increases in the number of gun deaths in this country. The number of illegal aliens coming into this country since 2021, right? So for the last 2.5 years has doubled, if not tripled, since 2019. The number of gang members in this country has risen. The number of DAs who have elected to go with cashless bail and no bail for felons or people accused of felonies and just to be released back out onto the street. How many major metropolitan cities have laws like this now? All of these things contribute to the number of gun deaths that go up. Because if a criminal is no longer afraid of having to be held in jail for a gun charge or armed robbery or, attempted murder, then what's going to stop him from doing it? Take Chicago, for example. And I know everyone hates, when Chicago gets brought up, but let's take it for example. Chicago has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, and yet they have probably the highest rate of gunshot victims in the country. Why is that? It's not because guns are hard to get. It's not because guns are illegal. It's not because you have to register your firearms. All points that Jon Stewart tries to make, but yet it doesn't solve the problem. And unfortunately, Nathan Dahm doesn't actually articulate any of his points well at all in this interview, and so it looks bad for the argument of the Second Amendment. But I hope to do better than that. So let's continue.
That takes it down. Would 1 billion guns do it?
Let's just run those numbers. 400 million, 50,000. You're talking about less than a fraction of, not even a percent, of 100th of a percent.
But it goes up, not down. So your argument is backwards.
But if you want, okay, so let's come up with a solution. Okay, so.
And see, right here, instead of saying let's come up with a solution, Nathan Dahm should have said, well, what contributes to the number going up outside of the gun? Right? Because it is the individual, not the gun. Guns aren't just walking down the street by themselves, popping off rounds and killing people. So, the argument again, you're leaving out key points so that you can make your point, but you're not taking in all contributing factors. And that's why his argument falls apart.
One of the issues, a contributing factor, again, I believe it's the individual that is the problem.
So your solution to that is give them more guns.
So I'm saying that because people are the problem, we need to look at the problems that those people are facing and how do we address it.
But you've removed the ability for the state to do that.
No, because you're...
If you don't have background checks and you don't have registration and permitting, how do you know who has a problem in terms of the people who you're giving a gun to?
Do you want to talk about the background checks first, or do you want to talk about solutions first?
I want to talk about...
Okay, here's the thing. Guns are dangerous, right? But freedom is dangerous. It's dangerous to governments, right? It's dangerous to the authoritarian types who like to rule you, under their iron fist, if you will. It is dangerous to the types of people who want to say rules for thee, but not for me, right? Because I promise you, I doubt Jon Stewart walks around anywhere in public without some sort of armed security. And those people are, in his mind, licensed to have the gun, and that's okay. Yeah, but here's the problem with registering and licensing firearms, is that now you've given the government a list. Everybody in the country who owns a firearm. And at any moment, they can just send their Gestapo out, knock on the door, and say, give us your firearms or go to jail. How many people are just going to turn over their guns? I mean, we saw in COVID. How many people just locked themselves away in the house? How many people strapped on a mask? How many people still wear a mask today? This country's full of sheep. And it takes lions to defend the sheep. And those lions are the ones that are hold on to their firearms because it is our Second Amendment right to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government. And if our government is demanding that everybody go out and get vaccinated, what's next? We demand everyone turn in your firearms or seek some sort of financial penalty or even the possibility of jail time. Or better yet, we'll just turn off your money when we implement our Fed coin and change everybody over to digital currency at the drop of a dime and say, guess what? Your US dollars and all the cash you have is no longer good. It's all garbage. You can throw it away because we now have a digital currency that we can control and program. And if you don't turn in your firearms, you don't get your money. You don't get to pay your bills. You don't get to do anything. Tell me, don't look at this video and say there's no way that'll ever happen. Because it happens all the time. Governments always overstep their bounds. And that is why the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment in our Constitution, in our Bill of Rights. That's why it's number 2. Number 1, freedom of speech and freedom of religion, freedom to assemble, freedom to protest, right? The freedom to say what you want, even if it's against the government. And the Second Amendment, the freedom to own and bear arms, because if that government decides they don't like what you have to say and they decide to use brute force to shut you up, you can retaliate and fight back. That is the whole point. And that's the reason why we don't have registries, or we don't want registries. That's why we shouldn't have them, because the government should not have control over who can and cannot have a firearm.
What you're doing is you're bringing chaos to order.
That's your subjective opinion that it's bringing chaos to order.
It's not my subjective opinion. We have 50,000 gun-related deaths. That's not a subjective opinion. Okay, so that's dead people.
Okay, 50,000 is close to the number. 48,000, I believe, is the number I saw. 48, close to 49. So they want to round up to 50. We'll call it 50. But of that, about 10%, if my math is right, close to 10%, is children, right? About 4,800 kids, in 2021 were killed by guns. Now, that's a large number of children killed by firearms in this country every single day. And it is a tragedy. And it's unfortunate. But I also have to ask, where did those occur? How did they happen? How many of them were teenage suicides? And how many does that compare to in the number of aborted babies in the country every year? But Jon Stewart has no problem with standing for women's rights and my body, my choice, right? But you don't want to compare the two. You want to use other rights to compare for your gotcha moment that you try to get here. So let's continue to watch, because you'll see it here in a minute.
Let me back up for a second. In every other place in your life, you want to bring order, but guns are the outlier for you. So let's start with immigration. You want registration, maybe a wall, maybe not a wall. Why do you want that?
Well, one of the reasons is because the fentanyl crisis.
Right.
I mean, okay, but
you don't know when it's coming across. So what do you do?
But the fentanyl crisis is twice what the gun death crisis is.
Okay, so until the gun crisis gets to the fentanyl level,
not until it.
You don't want to bring order.
No, not until it. But
do you see my point?
If we're going to talk about protecting lives, that's a larger issue in America than guns is. If we're talking about individual lives of ways that they can be protected, loss of life in America, there's loss of life through fentanyl. There's loss of life through obesity. The obesity crisis in America costs 6 times the number of lives as guns.
Right, and so, you're the guy saying, you know what would help this? Ice cream.
Okay, but here's the thing. We don't make people register so that they can go eat at McDonald's if they're under a certain weight, right? So that we fight obesity. We're not doing anything like that to fight obesity, right? We're not doing anything like that to fight the fentanyl crisis that's coming across, like he's pointing out. Now, I understand, like, Nathan Dahm doesn't do a very good job of fighting back against what Jon Stewart is saying here, because immigration and gun rights are two completely different things. You're talking about people, all right? You're talking about people coming into this country. So we need to know what type of people are coming into this country. So they have to do background checks. Jon Stewart's argument is faulty here because guns don't kill people. People use guns to kill people. And no matter how hard you limit access to firearms, bad guys will always be able to get them. As you said, there are 400 million guns in this country. The military-industrial complex alone won't allow the Second Amendment to be stifled much more than it is right now, because that's a lot of money they got to give up. Americans love their guns. 300 and some odd million Americans that live in this country and 400 million guns, right? And I promise you, not every American has a gun. That tells you just how beautiful the Second Amendment is, because there are people in this country who believe that to stand up against the tyrannical government, you need to be able to defend yourself. And sticks and stones won't do it.
No. So, you know what would help the problem that we're facing with firearms?
What?
The fatherlessness crisis that we have in America.
Now, this right here, you can see it in Jon Stewart's face. And I agree with Jon Stewart in this moment. I mean, if you look right here, he's like, are you seriously going to say this? Like, because this is one of the dumbest points to try to make. Yes, fatherlessness is a problem in this country, but it has, I don't think, that much of a correlation with gun deaths, okay? Because this is basically what, in my opinion, there's only one way to conclude what Nathan Dahm is trying to say here without saying it. And I'm not going to go there because I think this is a dumb point. I think you could have made 1,000 other arguments against why gun rights are. And the argument he never makes, okay? We'll watch this entire video, this little segment here. The argument he never makes is that we must stand up against a tyrannical government. He never makes that argument. And I wonder why. As somebody who's kind of followed Nathan Dahm's career a little bit, it seems kind of odd that he didn't make that point. Well, let's check this out.
If you look at the statistics.
Right. Yeah, they're dying from gun deaths.
80% of school shooters either came from a broken or fatherless home.
So you would say no guns for fatherless homes?
No, that's not what I would say. I would say that fathers need to be more engaged.
Great. So let's
crime with a firearm if they don't have a father in the home.
Let's put more resources into areas that are poverty-stricken. All for it.
And into fatherlessness, and that's something that we're doing.
But why, with guns, are you against bringing order?
I'm not against bringing order.
You are. You're also making it less safe for cops and for people. When the police go to a domestic call, it's the most dangerous call they can go on. In your world, if they knew that there were firearms in the house, that's a safer call. Is that what you're saying?
No, because police.
Because why?
Because police treat every situation as a potential.
But more guns makes us safer. So why don't, when the police go to a house filled with guns, why don't they breathe a sigh of relief knowing that this Second Amendment that shall not be infringed is being exercised so fruitfully in this home?
Are you familiar with the 39?
Okay. Now, what Jon says here is he's being sarcastic in a way, and he's like, how does that make the cops feel better knowing that the house is full of guns and that they're exercising their Second Amendment right if more guns make us safer? Now, he's conflating that more guns make us safer argument with more guns in one home, right? So more guns in the country make the country safer from a tyrannical government. That is what that phrase means. And you try to boil it down to one little home, right? And cops go into a domestic violence situation. Okay. Yes. Domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls for police officers. But let's not forget what Nathan Dahm says here either. That cops treat all situations like potentially harmful situations. And they should, because that is their job, right? And so doing away with guns is only going to allow bad people with guns to be able to do whatever they want. And there'll be no good people with guns to stop them. Because then guess what you have to do? If you don't allow the people to have guns, how do you ensure the government doesn't stomp on its people and just put the thumb down like China or Russia or like they did in Australia? Does anybody remember Australia in 2020 and 2021? COVID camps, lockdowns and curfews. Do you guys remember that crap? Do you remember the authoritarian governments that decided that they were going to put their thumb down on their people? England, New Zealand, China. If you don't remember, go look it up. If you were oblivious to the news back then, go look it up. Go look up what happened in those places during the COVID pandemic. That was a virus that, yes, it killed people. But come on, it wasn't Ebola. Right? And they locked us down. And so imagine what happens in this country if there are no guns out there. Or better yet, what happens to you when they decide to take your guns? They come knocking on your door because you had to register all of your firearms. And now the government knows you have them. They come knocking on your door and say, "Sir, you've been deemed a danger to the neighborhood and you have to relinquish all firearms or go to jail." What's going to happen? What's going to happen when that happens all over the country all at once? Do you really think Americans are going to stand by and allow something like that to happen? No. That's why we fight against registries.
9-year-old woman.
But I'm going to say, here is where Nathan Dahm completely loses the interview and the argument, because he just starts going to stories and anecdotes, and it's like, and Jon Stewart's like, I can find you 100 of them just like that. And it's like, we understand you can find stories where men went and got a firearm after being, given a protection order to stay away from an ex-girlfriend, and they shot and killed their ex-girlfriend or whatever. Or a woman does it to a man, whatever, right? You can find plenty of examples like that, right? No doubt. But you can find plenty of examples where they did it with knives, poison, cars. So we're going to ban all of those things? And he says, like, I'm not against the Second Amendment. So he doesn't want to ban guns. He just wants to make sure that the government can take them away at any time. Anytime that they deem you are not worthy because maybe you don't have the same beliefs in the government. Like maybe you question the government too much, or you are a conspiracy theorist, and because you spout all these crazy ideas like Alex Jones, you're not allowed to have firearms anymore. Right? What's to stop them from doing that? Right now, no registry is stopping them from doing that because they don't know who has guns and how many they have. They don't know how much ammunition is owned by certain people. And that's what keeps them in check. And I'm sorry, but as the American citizens, we ought to flex that muscle a little bit more, in my opinion. Let's continue with this interview, though. Like I said before, this is where Nathan Dahm completely loses the interview, though.
In New Jersey.
I'm familiar with a ton of anecdotes.
Yeah,
I'm asking you a simple question.
This is not an anecdote,
When
John.
the police
this actually happened.
go to a house,
she had a restraining order on her ex-boyfriend.
I can run through
I know, we can both run
hundreds
through
and
that.
hundreds of examples of women killed by their domestic partners by guns that were not taken away through the lessening of red flag laws. You're pivoting to anecdotes.
No, this is not anecdotes.
What the police say, if we had gun registration, if we were able to track purchases, they have a technology that every bullet would be stamped with an individual like a fingerprint. If we had an ATF that wasn't defunded, we would be able to enforce gun laws more effectively, and we would be able to solve gun crimes more effectively. You're against all of that.
Because the person is the threat, not the firearm, not the knife.
I get it.
The person and the individual is the one that is the concern here.
But you don't want anything that could help law enforcement or society determine whether or not a person is a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun.
Most even
the
law
registry
enforcement
would allow you to have much more effective background checks.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what I don't understand. He said it earlier in the interview too, that no background checks, and it's a federal law that you have to have a background check anytime you buy a firearm at a dealer or at a gun show. So that notion is completely, horseshit. Now, there is certain states where you can sell firearms between individuals with no background check. And that is, in my opinion, nobody's business, because the Second Amendment shall not be infringed, and it's my property, and I'm allowed to do with it whatever the hell I want. And if I sell a car and the person I sell it to never registers the car, does the government go down, hunt them down, and wonder what happened to the car? Nope. But what happens if you sell a gun and the other person doesn't register it? The government's going to come looking for you, right? And on top of that, what does a registry really do? Right? Because let's poke a hole in the whole registry scenario, right? Because let's say everybody has to register their guns. Every law-abiding citizen, right? Law-abiding citizen registers their gun. And then let's say criminals steal that gun. But the law-abiding citizen forgets to report it or doesn't know that it's stolen at the time. And that gun is then used in a crime. And because you can trace every bullet and the firearm, you go banging in the door and arrest that person for a crime that they didn't commit, because their firearm was used in that crime and they didn't know it was stolen to report it. How do you solve that scenario, Jon Stewart? Criminals don't care about laws. That's what makes them criminals. So no matter how many laws you imply or implement, it's not going to change what criminals do. And criminals will always be able to get their hands on guns. As long as we have a military-industrial complex that is selling firearms, there's going to be firearms in this country. That is just a plain, simple fact. Now, if your people can defend themselves against the criminal element and a tyrannical government, then you have a safer community. But you need good people with guns to step up and do the right thing. But we also need to change the laws that we use to prosecute good men with guns when they do the right thing. Case in point, Kyle Rittenhouse, self-defense, tried for murder. How is that justice in this country? So, let's not pretend like firearm laws and registrations will stop the criminals from doing criminal stuff, even with firearms.
I don't understand why you won't just admit that you are making it harder for police to manage the streets by allowing all of these guns to go out without permits, without checks, and without background stuff.
That is wrong. See, he's saying it again. Without okay, some go without permits. Like, in the state I live in, we have constitutional carry, which means I can carry a firearm concealed anywhere I want. And to be honest, well, I'm not going to say whether I carry a firearm with me or not, but I'll let you figure that out. But see, that's the beauty of it, right? In a state like that, you don't know, right? You don't know who's got a firearm and who doesn't. So let me ask you this, Jon Stewart, or anybody else who wants to comment in the comments down below. Let me ask you this. How often do you hear about people being attacked on the streets or on a bus or on a subway or anywhere like that in places that have constitutional carry? I just wonder how many of those crimes are committed in those cities where they have constitutional carry. If the numbers have gone down, somebody, anybody, tell me. What are the statistics in, say, New York versus, I don't know, Oklahoma City? Well, no, we won't use Oklahoma City. It's not big enough. What about Nashville, right? Nashville's got constitutional carry. What is the number of people being attacked on the street, violently in Nashville versus New York? Or on public transportation? Or in convenience stores, right? Like, come on. If you had constitutional carry, people would be a lot more skeptical about who they'd run up and sucker punch or stab or attack in the street and rob if they didn't know homeboy got a gun too. It is a deterrent. And though it may not deter every criminal, but it will deter the ones who are not willing to die for $20. So, but the stuff he says here about going out without checks and without background stuff, that is a load of crap. No gun leaves a gun store or gun show without a background check. I've always had to fill out paperwork and I've always had to do a background check for every firearm that I've ever had to buy at a gun store. But like I said, there are states who have laws where you can buy guns from individuals without having to go through that. And I am not opposed to those laws because I am a firm believer with good guys with guns. If they step up bad guys step off. And I believe that the law should be changed to defend good guys with guns when they step in and do something to help society and help the community, help somebody in need, or defend themselves from somebody trying to attack them or trying to do them harm. But some of the stuff that Jon Stewart says in here is just not true. It's factually false. No state is allowed to sell a firearm. No firearm dealer is allowed to sell a firearm to an individual without a background check. Period.
Why is that hard? Why can't you just stand by that?
Because that's not what I'm doing. I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms.
That's a different argument.
Okay, but
you
we
may
keep
do.
trying-
Here's what I'm saying. You want to say I'm a Second Amendment purist and I'm making it safer. You're not. You're making it more chaotic, and that's not a matter of opinion. That's the truth.
That is a matter of opinion, John.
But why take away their tools?
Because certain of their tools that they're using would be infringements upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, upon their constitutional rights, upon due
So you're
process,
saying
upon other things.
that registering is an infringement?
Yes.
Okay. Is voting a right?
Now, here's where Jon Stewart tries to get him in a gotcha again, right, with the registration thing, because he's saying you just said registration is an infringement. And this is where Nathan Dahm wasn't prepared enough, right? Because a registration of a firearm, it's not about the infringement on my right. It's about the keeping the government out of my business when it comes to firearms, because if I have to register every firearm, the government then can control that and take away my firearms when they want. And it's just, and however they want to do it. And so that then infringes upon my Second Amendment right. When I've done nothing wrong, but the government says I've done something wrong. So if I have a different matter of opinion on certain things and speak out on them, the government can say that, he's a radical MAGA Republican domestic terrorist. You must take his firearms away. Right? Like, come on. How that to me is when the government would go too far, and you're giving them the ability to go that far with the registration. So it's different, okay? And with voter registration, the reason why we have voter registration is because voting dictates how this country is run, not guns. Okay? If guns were dictating how this country was run, then we would be in a lot of trouble. Right now, the fact that citizens have guns keeps the government in check. Without that, you don't want to see what kind of government you live in, Mr. Stewart. I promise you. And if you want to experience it, go move to China for a couple of years and live over there and experience what it's like to live among a citizenry who cannot defend themselves against the government and cannot stop the government from doing whatever they want, like welding people into their homes. But if that's the kind of country you want to live in, by all means, keep fighting for a gun registration. Now, let's listen to John make his stupid point about voter registration.
It's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes.
What do you have?
have to do anything?
It depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old.
What do
And Dahm here tries to dodge the registration word, right? He doesn't want to use the registration word because he doesn't want to give Jon Stewart the satisfaction, right? So he's trying to dodge it as best he can, but it's horrible, right? It's horrible. He should have just said, he should have just called him out. He should have said, look, I know what you're trying to get at, and this is different, and let me explain why. And this is the problem I have with Nathan Dahm and this entire interview right here is that he never once brings up the fact that why the Second Amendment is there to begin with. And that bothers me. Through the whole thing, it bothers me. Because I've said it I don't know how many times already, right? That is the reason why we have that. And that's the reason why you can't infringe on it like you want to. Because the minute you give a registry to the government, we lose all power. We lose the power we have because they know who's got guns and who they can take them away from.
What do you have to do?
And
Keep
in
going.
some places, you have to have a government-issued ID.
What do you have to?
The smug ass look on his
On the voter
face.
rolls?
Register.
Register.
So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement?
Does the right to voting say shall not be infringed?
Oh, so this is just a semantic argument now.
No, it's not.
You believe voting rights can be infringed because it doesn't say specifically shall not be infringed.
Is it an infringement upon a 17-year-old's right to vote, since they don't have that right to vote?
No.
Oh, it's not an infringement on them?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
Because you're the one making the argument, not me. I'm saying even rights have responsibilities, and that within those responsibilities are responsibilities and order. Otherwise, it's chaotic.
Okay, so within rights we have responsibilities, right? And he says that he believes, you believe that voting rights can be infringed because it doesn't say that they can't be infringed. But John, you forget that people's gun rights get taken away from them too. Okay, just because the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed doesn't mean that there are not people in this country who do not have the right to keep and bear arms in this country. Convicted felons, for one. No convicted felon is allowed to keep a firearm anymore, just like they're not allowed to vote. So, another hole poked in your argument here about, you got to register. Guess what? I bet all of those people, I guarantee you that there are people in this country who were registered to vote and had registered firearms who are now convicted felons and cannot do either. So, how did the registry save them and save their rights? And how did it protect the people they hurt? All it does is give the government power to take our firearms away. I don't know how many times I got to say that in this video, but I'm trying to hammer that point through because this is the one point that Nathan Dahm neglects to make in the entire video. Now, I didn't watch the full interview because I have to go to Apple TV to watch it, and I don't feel like doing all that. But in this one clip that is being shared all over, the internet right now, it's like, why did he not make this point? And maybe he did in the entirety of the interview, but in this segment here, he never once says it, and I've said it I don't know how many times in the short time that I've been going through this. So I can combat every one of Jon Stewart's argument with the fact that the Second Amendment is there to make sure the government doesn't become tyrannical and take over and become the Chinese government, right?
I'll go you one further. You want to ban drag show readings to children.
To minors, yes.
Why?
Why?
What are you protecting?
Why can we prohibit children from voting, those under 18 from voting?
Why are you banning?
Also that
Is that free speech? Are you infringing on that performer's free speech?
they can continue to exercise their free speech, just not in front of a child.
Why?
Because the government does have a responsibility to protect.
I'm sorry?
The government does have a responsibility in certain instances to
What's
protect
the
children.
leading cause of death amongst children in this country? And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
Correct.
Okay. Up until 2020, that was not the case. The leading cause of death amongst children was car accidents up until 2020. And that's when car accidents and gun deaths crossed, and then gun deaths then have gone up again. But that's not because any of the gun laws have changed. We haven't made guns easier to get for people in this country. We only states are only passing more gun laws, right, and more restrictions. So if guns are harder to get, how are more people dying from guns? Because criminals don't care about your laws, John. They don't care about your freaking registries, and your registries don't stop crimes from happening. The only thing it's going to do is give the government power to take your guns. I don't know how many times I got to say that.
Right, yes.
So what is it?
I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms.
No, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms. More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, you don't give a flying fuck to stop that because that shall not be infringed. That is hypocrisy at its highest order.
Okay, so that's the clip part of it, right? Like, and to me, Jon Stewart again is conflating two different things, right? Because good people with guns don't shoot kids. And again, where Nathan Dahm missed the argument here, give me a second here. Let's back out of this. Where Nathan Dahm misses the argument here is that he never once pushed back on John's statistics, like saying, okay, yeah, kids are now the leading cause of children or death to children in this country is firearms now, right? But when did that occur? When did that become number one? Right? 2020. And what happened in 2020? Oh, we locked everybody away for a freaking year and told them they couldn't go outside and couldn't do anything and watch mental health go through, mental illness go through the roof. So not only that, right? But where do most of these children get shot and die? Is it on a farm somewhere? With accidental shootings? Is it hunting accidents? Or is it in urban areas where gun violence is prevalent and gang violence is a normal thing? I again bring up Chicago. How many kids under the age of 19 are shot and killed in Chicago every year? I would wager to bet that it is probably at least 20% of the number of kids shot in the entire country are shot in one city. That would be my guesstimation. Someone can actually do the math if you want to do the math and leave a comment down below. But I'm pretty sure that and I'm pretty sure the other ones are, mostly cities that have, or states that have strong gun laws and gun restrictions. Gun-related deaths. That's another thing, too, that they like to do, is they like to use that gun-related deaths. How many of those were shot by police officers? Right? How many criminals were shot and killed by police officers? White, black, Hispanic, green, brown, whatever, yellow, it doesn't matter. How many criminals were shot by police officers in a year? Now, how many of those were from the ages of 16 to 19? Take those out. Because you want to talk about protecting kids, right? Then really what you're talking about is protecting kids from accidental shootings at home. Because criminals don't give a shit about your laws and rules. Like I've said 100 times already in this video, they don't give a shit about your laws and rules, and they're going to do whatever they want. They're going to attack whoever they want. They're going to shoot whoever they want, and they're going to rob whoever they want, and they don't care what stray bullet hits what kid or anything like that. Happens all the time. And your laws don't stop it. Your gun restrictions don't stop it. Your registries don't stop it. And I've already poked a hole in your bullet fingerprint ID because what if it happens to be a stolen gun? Now you're hunting down the wrong person. and a murder of an innocent child will go unsolved, even though you guaranteed you'd be able to solve the crime because you have a registry and every bullet is individually identified. But yet now you're going to have to go to those parents and say, I'm sorry, but the firearm used in your child's murder was stolen, and we don't know who did it or where the firearm is. And what happens to the person who had the firearm, didn't know it was stolen, and couldn't report it? Do they get charged? Right? Somebody's got to answer for this child's death. But it's all about protecting children, right, Jon Stewart? Look, in the end, the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. It was put in there for a reason. First Amendment was you can say whatever the hell you want against your government. You can write whatever the hell you want against your government. You have the right to believe in whatever God you want to believe in. And you have the right to protest your government and be heard. And the Second Amendment is the right to make sure that they never take that right away from you. That's why it shall not be infringed. Well-regulated militia means that your militia needs to be trained and understand combat tactics if you are going to go into battle. That's all. You like to use the word to make it seem like you have to make sure that everybody, is on a list so that you can identify and help solve gun crimes. And it's all horseshit. So, if I've said anything that that was wrong, please let me know. Anybody got a different idea, different opinions, please leave them down in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. I'm going to leave it there. If you've made it all the way to the end of the video and you still haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. Click the link down, head on over to Rumble and Locals, become members over there so that you get content that you can't get here on YouTube. And if you like this video, smash that like button, share the video on all social media platforms. Those interactions will show the algorithm that this video needs more impressions, and that's how we're going to grow the channel. I appreciate you guys checking out the video and everything else you're doing, and I'll catch you later. Peace.